We are joined, I am delighted to say, by Dame Andrea Jenkins. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Connor. Hello there.
Hello. I really appreciate you giving up your time because during the preceding months towards the election, there was a meme on right wing Twitter saying 0 seats. People really wanted to punish the Conservative Party. And I think you, being brave enough to put your name to a resignation letter for Rishi Sunak, understood why some people might have been upset with the government. And I did say, let's allow some cooler heads to prevail, and perhaps we could tactically vote for some of the politicians that did the right thing. And you were one of six that made that list. So I will like to express the fact that I am gutted that you are not still in Parliament
Thank
fighting
you.
for things like lower immigration. But I'm sure we'll get to the election in a moment. Firstly, the main topic that's on everyone's minds is the riots that have happened
Yes,
since
yes.
Southport. And as you may have seen, the Labour government is insistent on only blaming the far right, um, the EDL, which has been defunct since 2013. So I wonder who is organising all these folks. But neither you or I want to see people smashing up and looting a Greggs or setting fire to a hotel. But we're also concerned about now the Muslim militias that have been roaming around and folks like Jess Phillips, who's now at the Home Office, making excuses for them. So, as a critic of the previous Conservative government's record on immigration and integration, and also obviously the Labour government, do you think politicians themselves have some responsibility for creating the situation?
Well, I think anybody who's been in government is responsible for creating the situation. What I found being a constituency MP for 9 years, that people are frustrated, Connor. They are fed up. They feel that they haven't been listened to. And in my old constituency of Leeds, you had waiting lists of 3 to 4 years to get a house. You couldn't get a dental appointment. People was contacting me to try and get GP appointments. So when you have situations like that that affect families on a daily basis, and you see people coming here illegally, getting put in hotels paid for by the British taxpayer, people are going to be quite rightly peed off, Connor. So I think this has been, unfortunately, it's been brewing for a long time. And I think the deaths of those beautiful girls and then Starmer's speech just actually it wasn't to me about the parents out there, about the children who got murdered. It was actually about, he made it about attacking certain members of society, blaming it on somebody rather than actually taking responsibility and seeing that people are not happy. So I think that is a frustration, Connor.
I did find it just shocking from even if you were just a ruthless politician, like a pure political operator, shocking that he didn't have the foresight to give a press conference after the girls themselves were murdered.
Yes.
He didn't have the flexibility to respond to the hecklers who were saying, well, why are you allowing our children to be endangered? What more will it take? And instead only gave two press conferences to, again, solely blame the far right. I mean, you, having worked in Parliament, you've brushed up against some of the more detached personalities than
Yeah.
yourself, the likes of Miriam and Liz. Why are they not able to address the concerns of their constituents? Why are they not listening to anyone?
I think, unfortunately, they're in their ivory towers. They think differently to you and I, and the majority of my former constituents, who even to this day, actually, Connor, when the riots was going on in Hare Hills, Leeds. Remember, I had a Leeds constituency. I had former constituents contacting me saying, Andrea, can you help? This is on like home turf now. This is in our nearby city. Can you be outspoken about this? It's wrong. Because what happened in Hare Hills, I'll go back to your question in a minute, but what happened in Hare Hills, I thought was pretty bad. It was a Romani community burning down buses, a real causing riots and upheaval in that community. Yet it took the police till, what was it, 1 o'clock in the morning to start making arrests. And I think it's this two-tier policing system which has been going on for too long. We saw it with the BLM marches. I saw it in Leeds where a beautiful Queen Victoria statue got defaced with the police standing by. We saw it with the pro-Palestinian marches in London where people were fearing for their lives. And it's that two-tier policing system. British people are actually in fair people, but when they feel that they haven't got a voice anymore. And back to your original question, I think they're just so out of touch. These liberal London elites, unfortunately, Connor. And there's so many career politicians now, and because Starmer's got a super majority, he can do what he wants, it seems.
Yeah, including deselecting members of his own party for not voting with him according to child tax benefits, but then someone like Jess Phillips defending armed Muslim mobs intimidating a female Sky News reporter. No, she keeps the whip. That's just totally fine. If you don't mind, just on the topic of Leeds and Hare Hills, I thought this was one of the
Yes.
best examples of two-tier policing. I revisited it today when we were just cataloguing all of the various examples of one rule for them, one rule for us. I was astounded to find that the message being sent here is that riots work because the children who were neglected and injured by those Roma parents were returned to them, and the judge said in her ruling that she wanted to damper down community tensions, essentially saying that if we don't put these children back in danger, in my opinion, that there's going to be another kickoff. And then I saw one
Look
woman.
what happened in Rotherham. Look at the grooming gang situation. Unfortunately, certain people in our society tend to close their eyes to some of these things, what's going on. And I think this has been brewing for decades, actually, because let's face it, every one of our institutions and public sector are so left wing. They're all about she, her titles. They're all about putting people in boxes and different demographic groups rather than about common sense policies and looking over all policies that's best for everybody, that they have turned a blind eye, which I think is wrong. And also I think that unfortunately, I mean, we saw during the Brexit years, I was quite an avid speaking out in support of Brexit, and the amount of times that I've been called a racist just for wanting control of our borders and wanting here in Britain to make our laws and to not be superseded by European Parliament. And I think the thing is that those with the loudest voices have dumbed down and made people afraid to speak out. I think that is an issue as well.
Yeah, I remember the iconic flip-off photo that sort of captured the mood of the nation for the Remainers at that point. I still enjoy that one. Actually, on the topic of maybe your party, then, I am very concerned that we're not going to see a course correction on this. And the reason I say that is because critics in the Conservative Party have been marginalised. You were not listened to on the likes of immigration or a leadership change, or a reform pact, which I'll bring up again later, I'm sure. Suella has not been listened to, whether it was on immigration or stopping the Palestine protests, or recently I was in the room at her NatCon DC speech where she criticised the pride flag, and Kemi Badnoch said she is having a mental breakdown. Moments before she gave that speech, I received an email informing me that I had been removed a Conservative Party member for saying I had supported reform policies, said that they shouldn't have kicked out Lee Anderson, and for opposing the transition of children. So policies that mainline Conservative politicians themselves have taken are enough to deselect me, maybe because I would have voted in a leadership election for people they don't
Connor,
like.
my late mother, she was 78 at the time. She got a membership rescinded. I mean, older people are not always good on technology, and she liked to post about immigration on her Facebook, and she didn't have a glass on, and I mean, we would have liked it anyway, probably, but their party removed her membership because of that, and they wanted her to do a diversity course, nearly 80-year-old woman, and a diversity course, which was it was explaining all the different genders. I mean, we've got two genders. It was explaining all the different genders, and I did the course for Mum just to get her. She said, "Sod it, I'm not doing that." I said, "Mum, I want you to be in the party. We need to vote for future leaders." And so I did the course for her. But oh my gosh, the course belongs in the Lib Dems. It doesn't belong in the Conservative Party. And to police something like that of an elderly woman who'd been an active campaigner for years in the party was pretty ridiculous, actually. So
Yeah.
I've seen the other side of it, and I lobbied the party chairmans at the time and said, look, this is crazy. We are Conservatives.
Why were those decisions not reversed in CCHQ then? Because there are always rumblings that CCHQ has its purse strings tightly controlled and they only allow one ideological orthodoxy. Why, if they have just suffered their worst election result in a century, are they incapable of course correcting?
I think, well, if you look, it's a bit like the civil service. The CCHQ, the same people remain regardless of what the election results are. So you're not going to get a culture change if it's the same people remaining in post, are you? Heads don't tend to roll in these roles if it's a bad election result.
So obviously, and I've criticised Nadine Dorries' policy positions when she was cabinet minister. I think proposing to lock Jimmy Carr up for a joke was a bit kooky. Let's be fair, but she's been claiming that there were a coordinated campaign to take down Boris from the inside, and she's named various names. Is there any credibility to her claims? Because I know that you were a big defender of Boris.
Yes, I mean, look, I was in the Whip's office during the time. I saw all sorts, not necessarily from the Whips, but I saw all sorts of manoeuvres to get rid of him. I think, unfortunately, because the MPs, the majority of them are the One Nation left of the party, they didn't accept Boris, even though he was a great communicator. The public loved him, and I think it should be the public who get rid of them, not necessarily the members. And it's not necessarily MP, should I say? And so I do think maneuvering was going on to oust him, unfortunately.
So I want the sort of case made to me because I agree with the principle that you shouldn't remove democratically elected leaders. This was one of the main things I was shocked happened to Liz, that she was obviously
exactly.
cooed out by a party that didn't back her. But as for Boris,
well, MPs who didn't back her. If you remember, the members backed her, which was so sad, actually. Yes.
Yeah, them and the permanent institutions that Tony Blair decided to instantiate that the party did nothing about. As for Boris, I mean, look, full transparency, I joined the Conservative Party when Boris became leader, or I voted for him. I was very disappointed by lockdowns being introduced and the suggestion that mandatory vaccination would be the way to get out. I, to this day, haven't understood why lots of sensible MPs have defended him as if it was defending his record. Is it just that he was democratically elected and should have remained and should have been allowed to course correct, or do you think he was right on some of the larger calls?
No, I mean, don't forget that he nearly died, didn't he? And his natural reaction is actually to freedom of the individual, and he did try fighting back. But imagine, it's easy in hindsight, it's easy the rest of us when we are not the prime minister, but to actually to have these scientists in your ear and painting a drastic picture that all these hundreds of thousands of people are going to die. I think he made at the time, given the data that he was presented with, he made the decision that he thought was right to protect people. Let's not forget that he made the decision on that. Now, would he make the same decision if he was in power now? I don't think he necessarily would, because hindsight's a great thing, but we was in unprecedented times. It's easy to attack people with their decisions when was going through something which was unprecedented. Again, in hindsight, it's easy, isn't it? I don't think necessarily because it was rushed out, I don't think necessarily the checks and balances was there as much as it would in peacetime, but that felt like wartime, especially in a prime minister's shoes.
I do still balk at the disregarding of credible scientific voices that thankfully the likes of Talk TV and GB News were platforming. We still had the shelter in place guidance.
I mean, at the time, I was also director of a university, and I set up a think tank for them. And at the time, I commissioned a study because I saw, having a young child, I saw the impact on a child at lockdown and his education. I mean, what you found with lockdown, children was behind on being able to speak, etc. So I commissioned a report on the effects of lockdowns on children's education. So, it's something that is important, but hindsight is, I did that during COVID. But hindsight is a great thing for everybody else. It's very easy to criticize the prime minister, isn't it? But when you're presented with certain data, he nearly died himself. Let's not forget of COVID. Is lucky to be here, actually. Is going to have a different viewpoint to the rest of us, isn't he?
Yeah, well, whether or not we're ever going to come to consensus on Boris's merits or failures, I think there is something to be said that the party should have recognised he was an election winner at the time, that Liz won the consent of the members, and
of
yet they
course.
selected Rishi Sunak, as you pointed out, who led them predictably into oblivion. Are you thinking they're going to have any capacity for course correction? Is anyone that's in the leadership race making noises that you think is a welcome return to conservative policies?
I mean, I'm supporting Pretty. She is a true Thatcherite conservative, and she's the only one who is a Spartan. She, like I, is a Spartan. We voted against all the Theresa May's sellout deals. We both voted against the Windsor Framework, which affected Northern Ireland, what Rishi brought in. And so what I'm looking for is someone with conviction. Now, I hope that she can get past the MPs. That's the issue. Is there's more One Nation MPs who's left than the Thatcherite Conservatives. So it's who can get past them, unfortunately. Now, if we get somebody like Pretty who will give Starmer a good run for his money, be outspoken, has got conviction, then I think that we could rebuild, especially given the record of the Labour government the last 4 weeks. We could rebuild and recoup. But if we choose the wrong leader, then I'll actually look whether I keep my membership, to be honest, whether I decide to stay a conservative or whether I just give up on politics.
Yeah, I don't blame you because I
Yeah.
didn't even contest my suspension. They said to me, "Don't post this email; it's confidential." So of course I posted the email. But with Pretty, so before I mention the other candidates, I think something that will eat into her vote share from the right of the base, and this is something that I know lots of young conservatives particularly feel, is that she was the Home Secretary that presided over Boris Johnson's change in the immigration laws, and the taps were turned on. Um, do you think she has a sufficient enough answer for that yet?
Look, don't forget. I mean, I know Pretty personally. She's a good friend. I mean, she's on a one-to-one, she's amazing. My 7-year-old son and her birthday is on the same day. She never forgets his birthday. She's lovely, but she's really gritty. She's got a great backstory, and what I love about her is what you see is what you get. And I think that that's lacking in politics. I don't know if you agree, Connor. People get into a position and then they don't necessarily deliver what they say. Now, with Pretty, also don't forget that I know personally that she was fighting back at the civil servants, and she was trying to get what we wanted regarding immigration, but they then pulled this bullying claim on her, didn't they? So trying to fight against the blob, as Nadine calls it, it's true, it does exist. I mean, my brief stint as an education minister, as the skills minister, was responsible for further education, higher education, apprenticeships and skills. I mean, I was tasked with bringing the freedom of speech bill through at the time, but it got delayed when Rishi came into power. And I was trying to meet J.K. Rowling, the university professors who'd been no platformed and lost their jobs were speaking common sense and the truth. And the way they tried to block everything. And for example, I also, there was, an outside body we was involved with, an organization which was under my remit. And the civil servants presented me with these 6 CVs of people who was going for this member of the board position. And every one of them was left wing, Connor. And when I checked out each of them, they had some of them were Corbynistas, was retweeting Corbyn. There was into the whole trans agenda, saying what that a man can be a woman. And so I said to the civil servants, how many CVs did we have? And it was 100 and odd CVs that we received. I asked, what criteria did you use for selecting these? Because I want to see every CV. But unfortunately, I got overrode by the Secretary of State. So if we can't get the basics right, and we've got politicians in there who want to climb the greasy ladder and will not fight back at civil servants, then we're not going to get change, Connor. And the civil servants, I think we need to have like they do in America, where the top levels we bring in every time there's a new government to stop these blocks. It really is like in Liz Truss's book and what she says, that there's blockage there. So I think Pretty tried her best, but they pulled the bullying card, didn't they?
Yeah, I think a Washington policy is very wise, especially after everything Liz told me. It really raised my hackles. Speaking of people that won't change the system, is it correct? Because I read reports that when you backed Pretty, you said essentially Kemi's a party stooge.
Oh my gosh, completely.
Why?
What I would love people to do is actually look at the voting record of every single candidate. You know, look to see, have people suddenly change their stance from one nation to centre right? You know, because to me, we want people who's got conviction. Politicians have always been this way, their decade in parliament or more. Look how they voted in Theresa May's deal. Have they voted for more net zero? Have they always trotted out the party line? Or have they got conviction? That's why I'm backing Pretty, because she's the one who actually put her head above the parapet, wasn't afraid to stand up to Theresa May. And I want somebody like that, because we've got to have somebody who's going to call out the Labour government. Now, regarding Kemi, look at her voting record, as I said. Look how she was so childish regarding Boris and those leaked WhatsApp messages. Go on, resign, etc. Do it. But also, I was on the European Scrutiny Committee with Sir Bill Cash. And if you think, Bill, what was he in Parliament for 50 odd years? He's an old stalwart of our party, and surely he's shown that respect. And the way she'd school him like a child, the arrogance, the lack of respect, just like she did with the speaker. And I'm a traditionalist, you know, that you do, the older generation, you show that respect. You can call him out politely, but, you know, she was talking to him like a child, and I don't like that arrogance. And she's just a party stooge, and there's other leadership candidates who are also party stooges. Some of them are very good at communicating, but as I said, I'd love members to look at the voting records of every candidate, because that will tell a different story than the rhetoric that what's coming out.
I know Robert has a plan to run with the rhetoric of Nigel Farage, but the composure of David Cameron to make inroads to the more right wing base. So I couldn't possibly infer that's what you would mean there.
I mean, I like Robert. I was Robert's PPS during
I liked his
lockdown.
paper.
Yeah, I mean, he's very good at challenging civil servants. I was there where, you know, a lot of civil servants was working from home during the lockdown, and he was challenging them. So he's very bright. He gets on with a brief, and he was very strong since January on the migration stuff. But to me, the one who has shown since her career in Parliament that she does have conviction, she will stand up for true Thatcherite policies, is Pretty, and that means a lot to me.
So on the reform issue, because I think that links to Pretty quite well, because I think Pretty did say the other day that Nigel was wrong to suggest that there was two-tier policing. You were a...
I mean, don't forget as well, though, Pretty is in a difficult situation because she's not from the left of the party. Her electorate at the moment to get past is the One Nation lot. So, you know, can she be as strident as she wants to be at the moment?
Yeah, I suppose that's why Suella didn't run.
She has got to get past them, and that is a mountain to climb, Connor.
Well, obviously, the reason that the One Nation lot retained so much of the rump as they did is because
they was put in safe seats.
Quite, yes, and Reform took a hell of a lot of votes away from some decent MPs.
That's how I lost my seat. My vote split in half.
Yeah, and same with Miriam.
They didn't send anybody against Hilary Benn, who the candidate was from Hilary Benn's seat. He didn't even live in my seat. And Hilary Benn, the biggest Remainer who put the Benn amendments in Parliament to stop Brexit. They had a free reign there. There was no... Labour had a free reign. There was no candidate from Reform, which I found incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, I think some better candidate vetting and also better seat selection would have done some favours for
what they
the right
should have done, rather than just trying to destroy the Conservative Party, they should have hand-selected a few centre-right Conservatives to save to help rebuild. And then we could have rebuilt afterwards.
So yourself and Jacob were saying this might be a good idea ahead of the election. Why did that not emerge? Was that because of the Conservative side? Was that because of the Reform side?
A bit of both, actually. I mean, like I put in the Telegraph article, I listed it how it was. I met with people in Reform. They wanted me to go over, but I'm one of these go down fighting with a ship. You know, I was a Conservative. I got asked to go over during the Brexit Party years, and I don't regret not going over, because to me, I got voted as a Conservative. Conversations were had, even with the Prime Minister at the time, Rishi. I personally met with him. And I think that would have been, I mean, I suggested to both parties, including to Nigel, that why don't we have joint candidates? I even looked into the Constitution and got a constitutional expert into that. So we have Conservative and Reform candidates in red wall seats. Now, there's blue wall where the One Nation, not they wouldn't want to stand as that, but where if it could be candidate choice, we only need to change one paragraph of the Constitution. Then I thought that would make political sense, because we could have had a majority that way. Might have been a small majority, but we could have stopped Labour. But instead, we've got a Labour supermajority. Lots of us lost our seats, and Reform's only there with 5 MPs. Yeah, it's better than 0, but they've still got a long way to climb, haven't they? And if you look, actually, the reason I lost my seat, well, the boundary changes wasn't very good. I ended up losing part of my old constituency and moving into Rachel Reeves, where they had all the tower blocks, etc. So it was going to be a hard task, but the turnout in my area was very low. The Labour vote was 1,000 less than they had last time, but then Reform completely split my vote in half. Even though the candidate wasn't from the area, etc., it was a protest vote, and people stayed at home. That was what got us all into this situation.
So being realistic for 2029, what's the bet? Is it a Labour continuation despite them torching their honeymoon period, or?
It's hard to predict it into a new parliament, Connor. I mean, look at the last decade, how there's been so many changes. Anything can happen. I mean, what you might find is that Reeves and Rayner try to push out Keir because they want the position. Because I remember when I was in the Whip's office during Boris's time, when you do have a big majority, it's actually harder to control people. Because if you think there's less positions to give out to try and encourage people to vote your way, and so it's harder to control them. So it won't surprise me that you'll start seeing, especially when these new MPs start getting lots of emails from constituents over fuel allowance, etc., and some of the awful policies they're going to bring in. They'll then start thinking, "Oh gosh, I'm going to be a one-term MP if I don't start speaking out." So
yeah, I did hear from a Rayner family friend, funnily enough, that she herself expects to be sacked within the first 12 months because of incompetence and also ambition.
Yes.
So.
No, absolutely. So what will happen 5 years from now? Who knows? I mean, I think that if we get things right and the gods align, as they say, we have the right candidate, or we do a deal with Reform going forward, then, we can have a majority then. But at the moment, there's too many variables to be able to comment honestly on that.
Right. Well, I think they would have done a hell of a lot better had they have listened to you on many an occasion. And thank you so much for all of your work that you did while in Parliament, and your research team as well. I mean, I covered in depth your illegal migration debate right before the general election was called, and it helped a hell of a lot with making these cases. So gutted you're not still around on the green benches, but I hope you're still outspoken from outside the town.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm pragmatic. Everything happens for a reason. I'm sad to not be an MP, but actually I'm excited about trying new things, and I'll always speak out whatever my next route takes.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to talk to you, Connor. Bye-bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was interesting, wasn't it? Thank you for watching that clip from Tomlinson Talks. If you liked that and you would like to see more, you can get the full 90-minute show every week on a Wednesday afternoon, live from 3 p.m, only on lotuseaters.com, and all of the other content that my colleagues produce behind the paywall for as little as £5 a month. Thank you very much for supporting us, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, goodbye.